Hi, everybody. My name is Sarai.
I'm Juliet.
And I'm Valerie.
And today we're going to talk about summarize the data set.
Next slide.
Wait, hold on. All right.
Oh, sorry. Okay. When summarizing a data set, you first have to remember the how to find the range. In statistics, the range of a data set of a set of a data is the difference between the largest and the smallest value. Difference here is the specific. The range of set of data is the result of the subtracting the sample maximum and minimum. Ranges differ between the lowest number and the highest number. Take, for example, math test scores. Let's say our best score all year was 100 and your worst was a 75. Then the rest of the scores don't matter. For range, the range is 100 minus 75 minus 20 equals 25. The range is 25. Next slide. Then another form is finding the median. The median is a middle number of the data set. It is exactly like it sounds. To figure out the median, you put all the numbers in order, highest to lowest or lowest to highest, and then pick the middle number. If there is an odd number of data points, then you will have to just pick one middle number. If there is an even, then if there is an sorry, if there is an even number of data points, then you need to pick the two middle numbers, add them together, and divide them by 2. The number will be the median. Next slide. To find the mean, the arithmetic mean is to calculate by adding together the values in the sample. The sum is then divided by the number of items in the sample. When people say average, they usually are talking about the mean. You can't figure out the mean by adding all the numbers in a data set and then dividing by the number of the numbers. For example, you have 12 numbers, you add them together, you add them up and divide them by 12. That will give you the mean of the data. Next. Mode. The mode is a number that appears the most. There are a few tricks to remember about mode. If there are two numbers that appear most often and the same number of times, then the data has two modes. This is called bimodal. If there are more than two, then the data will be called multidal. Sorry, I can't pronounce it. If all the numbers appear the same of the times, then the data set has no mode. Next slide.
Now I'll be talking about the dot line plot and the histogram graph. So the dot plot is also known as a line plot. It's a type of graph that shows a frequency with a given event that occurs in a set of data. They provide relevant, quick, and simple ways to organize and display small sets of data. The histogram is a graphical display of data using bars of different height. It looks similar to a bar graph, but the histogram has no gaps. So I'll be presenting some examples from different scenarios. So this is going to be how to find the total observation in a word problem. So how to find the total observation in a word problem. So Kira kept track of her test scores in reading for this quarter. They were 95, 100, 89, 97, 100, and 98. How many observations have been made? So this question is a key statement for students to understand that when you see this question, it basically means that you're only going to find the total of the test scores in this case. So I have the numbers here listed, and we're gonna count how many tests did she kept tracking. So she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in total, she tracked 6. So the answer to the question is there are a total of 6 test scores that have been made observed. This question, it has to do with to find the total observation in a dot plot. So Mr. Jack wants to know how many siblings do each of his students have. This data is displayed in a provided dot plot. Based on the dot plot, how many observations were made. I also want to say that each dot represents a student. So to keep track, we could have a list of how many each student have siblings. So the first one, four of his students have zero siblings. Eight of his students have one sibling. Six of his students have two siblings. Three of his students have three siblings, and one of his students have four siblings. There are two ways to find the total. You could count each black dot, or you could just simply add the numbers here. If you add them correctly, we'll get 22. So the answer to the question is there are a total of 22 students. Um, Another is how to find the total observation in a histogram. So a environmental science class wanted to look at the average temperature for each day this past month. This data is displayed in the provided chart. Based on the histogram, how many observations were made? The number of observation is representing the numbers days the temperatures are being tracked. Each bar goes up for a certain number of days. So to find the observation, all we need to do is add the height of the bar. So the first one is 8, second one is 20, and the third one is 2. So if we add these correctly, we'll get 30. So the answer to the question is there are a total of 30 days that have been observed.
Thank you, Sana. Now I'll be explaining how to find the mean. We may describe the center of a data distribution using a fair share value called the mean. We may have heard the term average or even just mean. These terms are used to describe the measure of the center. This leads up to the formula for add up and divide. The question that we may have is, looking at dot plot 1, what would you say is the typical amount of hours of sleep a student gets on a school night? By looking at the dot plot 1, you can see all the dots on the numbers of hours of sleep. And you see that an inference that you can have based on the dot plot graph is that more of the students lean towards 8 to 9 hours of sleep on a school night. And looking at dot plot 2, you're able to see a different scenario, whereas if someone were to ask some students in the class, how many pets do you have? And in a summary, looking at the second dot plot, you can see that one student has 1 pet, 2 students have 2 pets, 1 student has 4 pets, and 1 student has 6 pets. Next slide, please. Now, this comes with a different scenario, using different scenarios. From dot plot 3, we can see and express how the dot plot changes as the scenario changes. And here, this is a little bit different. Using Unifix cubes and dot plots, are we able to display the differences within scenarios using a dot plot and the Unifix cubes? For example, if one student were to share a pet with another, in this scenario, the dot plot and the numbers on the side will help promote the idea that both the dot plot and the stacks of cubes should have the same data value, but would introduce the mean of the data. And I enlisted in the dot plot 3, in the little summary right there, that the student who had 6 pets now has 5, and you see the little dot move on to the 5. And the student who had 1 pet now has 2, which includes the other arrow pointing to the new dot. The dots are moving towards each other, and the numbers on the side represent, if you were also to add them up, you would get the same number. Now, this example uses both the Unifix cubes and a dot plot, so you can see the Unifix cubes on the bottom there, to help signify the number of pets each student has in the 6th grade class. The number of cubes would correspond to the dot plot. So then again, the Unifix cubes also are the same as the dot plot. There are no changes whatsoever. It's just the change in scenario using the cubes. Next slide, please. Now, an evaluation for finding the mean, we may find that the same data value is the mean of the data. What's known as the fair share is also the mean, and it comes from finding the total of the data values and dividing it by the total data points, or just simply add up and divide. Division will help in finding the total into equal parts. Some more examples of how to find the mean are, If a class of 27 students had a mean of a 72 on a test, and if you were to interpret the mean of 72 in the sense of a fair share measure of the center of the test scores, the answer would be that 72 would be the score that all 27 students would have if all 27 students had the same score. Now, if you were to draw a dot plot that displays that your school soccer team has scored a mean of 2 goals in each of the 5 games, the answer would be right there. This dot plot would help accentuate that all the 5 dots on the number 2 representing the number of goals that took place in all 5 games. Next slide, please.
Well, that would conclude our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.